We often describe God using words like kindness, generosity, wisdom, knowledge, and justice. But have you ever wondered on what basis do we say God actually has these qualities? Some people even claim that God is simply a creation of human imagination, and that we've projected our own traits onto this imagined being. In this episode, as always, we are going to explore this question through clear and logical reasoning. We'll examine whether these so-called human attributes actually and rightfully belong to God. Let's begin with a simple thought experiment. Imagine a human being born into a world where no prophets have ever appeared. There are no religions, no scriptures, and no one ever speaks to them about God or any divine qualities. They've never heard of the idea of God having human-like traits. Now here's the key question. Could such a person, just by using reason alone, come to believe in a God that has exactly those same attributes? It may sound surprising, but the answer is yes, and here's why. This person, by observing the world around them and reflecting on their own existence, would arrive at a basic truth, that being cannot come from non-being. In simple terms, existence can't arise out of absolute nothingness. Everything that exists must have either come from something that existed before it, or from something that still exists. This is a fundamental, unshakable principle of logic. Now, this individual becomes aware of themselves. They realize, I exist. They observe their own thoughts, their intelligence, their ability to reason. They experience beauty, they feel kindness and generosity, and they naturally value these things. They recognize love, fairness, truthfulness, all these positive traits that they carry within themselves. At this point, they logically conclude these qualities couldn't have come from nothing. They must have a source. So they begin looking for that source in the world around them. They see that animals have some of these traits, but only to a limited degree. They see that other human beings, like themselves, also have these attributes, but again, in varying and imperfect amounts. But here's the problem. No one and nothing they encounter seems to be the original source of these traits. Everything they observe is still in need of more, still growing, still learning, still seeking. So where did these beautiful transcendent qualities come from? They now face two choices. Either they say, there is no source for these qualities, which is logically impossible, because once again, something cannot come from nothing, or they imagine a source so vast and perfect, a source that is greater than anything in the physical universe, yet from whom everything originates. And that, essentially, is one of the most profound definitions of God, a being who is not confined to the created world, but from whom the entire universe, including all positive traits, ultimately flows. So continuing from where we left off in the previous episode, where we discussed discovering God through self-awareness, we now come to a clearer understanding. If we humans possess virtues like love, justice, compassion, and wisdom, then these virtues must come from a higher, perfect source. And for that source to be complete, it must contain these traits in their fullest and most absolute form. That source is what we call God. Now here's a natural follow-up question. If positive traits originates from God, does that mean the negative traits, things like lying, injustice, cruelty, also come from Him? or do they come from somewhere else? Let's go back to something we touched on earlier. All that truly exists is rooted in divine goodness. In other words, existence itself is good. What we call evil is not a thing that has its own independent existence. It's more of a distortion or imbalance. Let me explain. Evil often arises when a divine trait is taken to an extreme while others are ignored. This creates imbalance. For example, take the human desire for power. Power in itself is not bad. In fact, it's a divine quality. But when someone seeks power obsessively while neglecting truthfulness or fairness, they might begin to lie or oppress others. In that case, we say they're being evil. But what's really happening is this: they're misusing one divine quality while suppressing others. The lie is not a thing in itself. It's just the absence of truth. Just like darkness is not a substance, it's simply the lack of light. So rather than imagining that evil is something God created, we start to see it for what it is, a kind of deficiency or imbalance in the divine attributes humans have received. God is the source of everything that is good, and what we call evil is just a result of the misuse or lack of that goodness. Let's now look at this from one more angle. Negative traits cannot have a true origin. They are destructive by nature, and anything truly destructive cannot sustain itself. It breaks down and disappears. That's why negative human qualities like hatred, cruelty, deceit can't have a lasting source. They don't create anything. They destroy. What truly endures, what holds the power to shape and sustain life, are the divine qualities: love, wisdom, kindness, and justice. And the source of those qualities must be something infinite and all-encompassing, something far greater than ourselves, something we call God. As we've seen through this line of reasoning, the mysteries of God begin to unfold the more we reflect inward and apply our capacity to reason. This is why self-knowledge leads to God knowledge. Anyone who hasn't yet discovered their own connection to the divine simply hasn't awakened fully to themselves. They haven't yet become fully aware of who and what they truly are. So let me end today's session with a profound thought. God is like an infinitely valuable treasure hidden within the human soul. God can't be shown or proven to others unless there is self-awareness. The real God, the perfect, complete version of each of us, is always silently present within. And the person who sincerely seeks growth and transcendence with enough honesty and effort will eventually find God within themselves. And through that discovery, they will reach their highest potential. Many people call that state paradise.
The content you just listened to is part of the teachings of Sayyid Saeed Tagavi Zadeh in the field of theology and the pursuit of true happiness. These teachings are interconnected, so many of the unclear points will become clearer in the upcoming episodes. For this reason, it is important to follow the series from the beginning in order to fully benefit from its inner value. Additionally, there will be separate programs dedicated to answering frequently asked questions. Until the next episode, goodbye and may God be with you.